And as we leave the harbor, I want to give you guys a general description of Redondo Beach and the underwater canyon. Hello everyone and welcome back. Part 1 of this series began the discussion as to where you might want to paddle to once you launch out of King Harbor and Redondo Beach. So in summary, you don't want to paddle east in this direction. There are no fish here. Paddling north has a couple of issues unless you are specifically targeting the Hermosa artificial reef. Paddling south is generally a pretty good idea unless it is, late fall or winter. So that's going to leave west, which is a problem because you're going right over the deepest portions of the underwater canyon. We're talking about 500, 600, 700 feet. And so I think the sweet spot is to paddle in the southwest direction. Okay, Palawan Wreck is right here. You have the edges or the ledges of the underwater canyon, which is great for rockfish. And even the deeper portions here in terrain which appears to be flat, we're talking about 200, 250 feet. It does have sporadic rock formations, which are also great for targeting rockfish. And so when we left off with part 1, we discovered that there was no kelp in the Malaga Cove area, which made it kind of pointless to stay and fish here. So we turned northwestish, and then we decided to target this area here and then work our way back this way to the harbor. And on the way back, we're gonna hit stuff like the Palawan Wreck and then the edges of the canyon. In addition, part 2 is going to have much more fishing footage, which I'm sure some of you are going to really appreciate. Okay, so let's do some visual compare and contrast. Here we are in shallow water. We got 35.8 feet. And you can tell, I hope you can make this out, you can tell by these contour lines that this is a very flattish area. And the sonar tells us, yeah, there's some stuff. And when you first get your sonar, every little speck you see, you might be tempted to, throw down. Fight that temptation, okay? I mean, yeah, there is some stuff on the sonar, but there isn't enough to warrant a lot of time and energy spent at a spot like this. Now let's compare the first scene to this scene right here. Here we've pushed out into deeper water. We're in about 80 feet of water. The zoom level here doesn't show it, but the contour lines are now beginning to stack up a little bit tighter because we're falling off a shallow shelf into deeper water. And look at all the action here. And I'm going to roll the footage to give you insight as to what I'm seeing. Now when we go from a solid red like that to, again, a bag of Cheetos being thrown up into the air like this, that's probably mackerel. But regardless, this entire area, very fishy. Let me take the time here to describe more in detail what we're looking at. Whenever we see a very dense red amoeba-like formation like here, that is very small fin bait like anchovy or maybe sardine. And then off to the right here, whenever you see, I use the term, someone takes a bag of Cheetos and tosses it into the air, a little more, broken up and a little less dense, that's probably mackerel chasing the smaller fin bait. And then of course, whenever you have a scene like this, you're kind of hoping that underneath everything, there are bigger predatory fish like sand bass chomping on either or of the fin baits. So here I'm trying to get my jig all the way down to the bottom as quickly as possible because I don't want to get picked up by the mackerel. We're looking for probably a sand bass, but see, it's gonna be hard to get it past all the mackerel. You can just tell they're tapping it on the way down. Yep, this is another mackerel. You can tell by the frequency of the vibration. When it's totally frantic like that, that's a mackerel. And they're not a great bait size. They're too big for whatever reason. Maybe it's the time of year. but these are a little too big for bait, unless you're chasing big lingcod. Having said that, let's say that I am targeting mackerel to pick some up as bait. I'm not gonna waste time taking the jig all the way down to the bottom. I'm gonna take the top-down approach. I'm gonna stop the jig somewhere above where I think they are, and then work it 5 feet down at a time. And this is where having a bait casting reel makes it so much more efficient. So let me demonstrate. And when you're fishing vertically, the bait casting setup is such an advantage because you can drop the rig and then put it into free spool, and then you're basically hunting up and down the column vertically, right? And with the bait caster, you can just take your thumb off the spool, drop it down to where you think the fish might be, jig a couple of times, and you want to start top down because, as I understand it, fish hunt looking up. All right, so stop and then jig a couple of times. If you don't get action, just take your thumb off the spool, let it go like 5 feet, stop, jig up and down, and then rinse and repeat, right? The bait casting setup makes it so easy to do that. Okay, so use your imagination. If you were using a spinning outfit, you'd have to open the bail, let some line out, close the bail, jig. And if that's not where they are, then you have to open the bail, let some line out, close the bail, jig, right? So bait caster, definitely, it's all one-handed, super easy to let line out. At this point, I'm gonna leave the shallow area topic with this parting thought. In the summertime, you can catch bait everywhere, right? Like even in shallow water. As the water gets colder, I'm noticing that in shallow water, 30, 40, 50 feet, you're not gonna find bait, not even mackerel. And only when moving out to deeper water, maybe around 75, 80 feet, that's when you begin to see bait. And so they seem to be really frequenting the band of water depth from maybe around 70 feet to maybe about 120 feet. So that's where you're gonna find them in the winter time. Okay, so the game plan is to get to deeper water, 200, 250, and then send live bait down there. Well, these are not live, and they're a little bit bigger than I would like them to be, but this is the size that we're picking up today. But one rule of thumb that I found is if you're chasing big fish, you cannot do any better than live bait. And it doesn't really even matter the species. They could be topwater, they could be bottom dwellers. Big fish get big by not being stupid and chasing, little strips of squid, okay? So the rule of thumb, again, if you want to chase big fish, use live bait. Okay, so you can see the rig from kind of far away. I've got the 12-ounce sinker. What do you call it, the T-rig or whatever. I got the live bait. So let me take the time here to describe the rig in more detail, because my assumption is most of the people that watch my videos are just kind of getting into the game, like beginning kayak fishermen. My main line is here. It's 50-pound braid, I think. And then I have a T-swivel. And then on one of the eyes, I have 30-pound or actually 40-pound fluoro leader, probably about 3 feet. And on the other eye, I have about maybe 1 foot of 30 or 40-pound mono or fluoro, and then I have a 12-ounce sinker torpedo. Now, 12-ounce is typically heavier than I use. I typically can get away with 8 ounces, but because of the size of the bait, I mean, they were big bait and they create a lot of drag, I had to resort to 12 ounces of torpedo sinker. Now, the reason this length of leader here is 3 foot, as opposed to 1 foot here, because I kind of feel like giving the bait, assuming that it's kind of lively and fresh, giving the bait a longer leash gives them more freedom of movement and gives them a more natural presentation as opposed to a shorter leash. The drawback is there's more length of line to get tangled up in your rig, but you can't have everything. And then the other thing I did a little bit differently, and I have no idea if it makes any kind of difference, but typically the weight or the sinker would go here and then the fish would go here. But I didn't like the idea, if I hooked into a big fish, of the stress being put on this 45-degree angle. I'd much, prefer that the stress be up and down. So that's why I chose to rig the bait here so that if I hook into a big fish, the forces are completely vertical and not 45 degrees. Anyways, that's how I did it. As far as the rigging of the bait, what I did was I had like a 3/0 treble hook pinned to the nose. Now most people would use like a single J hook or a circle hook. To be honest, rockfish, lingcod, they're not especially like hook shy or line shy or anything shy. If you put something in front of them and they're in a mood, they're gonna bite it. Now if I were fishing a tournament and I needed to bring each and every fish up, what I would do is, again, these are big baits, so what, like 12 inches? I would probably put a 5/0 J hook here, and then I would probably put a treble hook here as a stinger hook. But I was kind of lazy and I only used the, I think again it was like a 2/0, 3/0 treble hook here, and I'm gonna pay the price for my laziness. And again, redundant, but I'm gonna have the nose of the kayak into the wind because some of these marks are not very big and you don't want to be blown off the mark by the wind. And the wind will quickly blow you off the mark if you are broadside into it. Now the thing to take away here is, watch my feet. I'm pedaling along at a pretty decent clip, but I'm not really going anywhere. But it takes that kind of effort just to stay in place because the wind wants to push me back. And it looks like we are there. And with live bait, it's a waiting game, right? Well, something's chomping on it. You see the tip? Okay, so I've got... Okay, I'm gonna freeze the video here because this is gonna be entertaining. Now, I get picked up by a big fish. Look at the bend on this rod. This rod is a broomstick. So a fish that's gonna pick up a 12-inch mackerel and put that kind of bend on that rod is a big fish. But I'm about to make a huge mistake. I'm gonna start yapping away and commentating, trying to hold a conversation, stop reeling, and take the pressure off this fish, which apparently was not very well hooked. Hooked into something here. Okay, so anything that takes a fish like that is gonna be a bigger fish. Oh, you know what? And that was all she wrote. Typically with a big fish, you're gonna get one crack at them, and once they get stung, they're not gonna come back around for seconds. Okay, here's the other great advantage of, a casting outfit. Like, you're gonna be working with 8 ounces, 12 ounces of lead and 250 feet of water, and putting it back down and bringing it back up is very tiring, right? So with the casting outfit, you can rest this on your knee and just wind, right? And so the bait is gone. Okay, so whatever I had hooked on there took the bait and took off. But if you use your imagination, if you have a spinning outfit, you're going to be something like this, right? And so a lot of pressure is going to be put on your biceps and your shoulders because you're going to be doing this all day long, right? And again, with a casting outfit, rest this on your knee and just wind. And then the other thing is, this is a high-speed reel. It's probably something like 6-to-1, which basically means that for every turn of the handle, this spool will rotate 6 times. So anything that's like 6-to-1, 7-to-1, 8-to-1 is kind of considered high speed, and it does pay dividends when you're trying to haul something up from like 200, 300 feet. All right, so well, we swung and missed with a live bait, so I'm gonna send some squid down. Same rig, let's see what happens. gonna be a much smaller fish. And this is one of the drawbacks, for me anyways, of fishing bait, right? Because it doesn't discriminate against the little guys. And I never feel good about leaving little guys floating on the surface. So now I have to use some kind of rig to send this little guy back down. Because I don't want that fish to perish or be picked up by a pelican or whatever. But I guess the point is, if you want action, if you're out here with a kid or something like that, it's kind of hard to beat bait, you know, if you don't mind dealing with the bycatch, the smaller fish. Okay, just gonna again just rest it on my knee and just crank away. That's the beauty of the casting outfit. No muss, no fuss. A lot less tiring than trying to bring this fish up with a spinning outfit. Okay, so you know, a little red. So yeah, I mean, this is not the kind of fish that I would keep. I don't really keep many fish anyways, but yeah, we're gonna have to send this guy back down. Okay, so with these little guys, again, I don't feel good about leaving them to float and, you know, being at the mercy of the birds and stuff. So this is a homemade descending rig. It's a 16-ounce torpedo sinker, 10-aught hook or something like that. And so what I like to do is find a portion of their mouth that is not like super bony, and I want to pin him from the outside, because if I pin him from the inside here, right, he's going to swim right back into the weight. Okay, so I like to pin him from the outside. Okay, that way he can just swim away from the rig. And then I will take the rig and then send them down. And typically, like, it feels like around 70 feet, 80 feet, where they kind of come back to life and they will wiggle free by themselves. Sometimes you'll have to kind of give it a couple of tugs. But yeah, I've had good success doing this. Okay, so he's still on here. And then, but if you work it up and down, you will get to a point where, okay, now I feel like he's off, right? So if I bring it back up, okay, and just like that, he is gone, right? And so when you bring them up from 200, 250 feet, they don't look very good. You know, their eyes are bulging and maybe their air bladder's, you know, distending. But I watched a YouTube where some, you know, local university did some mortality rate studies, and if you can get them down to the bottom, their survival rates are apparently pretty good. So anyways, I feel good about that, and I hope everyone takes the time to, you know, do that as well. Okay, so anyways, that kind of demonstrates one of the reasons why I don't like to fish bait, and I jokingly say it's because I'm too lazy. But, you know, most of it is because I don't want to put little fish through that kind of stuff. And even with the bigger fish, I don't really keep fish. So that's why I kind of choose the jig or the artificial stuff, because it seems to strike a compromise, you know, between, you know, discriminating against little fish, but it still gives you some action. So yeah, this is my preferred method. Let's see what we have here. Oh my goodness, it's a mackerel. Okay. Okay, so a mackerel obviously isn't what we're after, but it just goes to show you how adaptable these fish really are, and that's why they're so plentiful. Super tough fish. You can catch them at the surface, of course, and you can catch them all the way down to 250 feet. Just remarkably adaptable fish. And I've been told that in terms of like omega-3s and whatever, it's one of the best fish for you. Okay, I'm gonna tire him out a little bit. And then the other thing I wanna show you guys is, and this is where the casting outfit kind of makes things easy too, is most new people tend to wind the fish all the way to the tip like this. So again, you know, like a lot of new people bring the lure right to the tip or just about, and then they'll pull back, okay, so they can reach the tip. What can be happening is they could be dunking their reel inside salt water first of all, right? So they're doing this and maybe the reel's going into the drink and then they're working with this loaded, okay? It's a dangerous situation, right? You don't want to do that. Again, you know, use your imagination. There's a fish on here, so you're reeling him up, and as you get him closer to the boat, right there, that's not enough line, okay? So depress, okay? And then just eyeball it and let out roughly a rod's length, right? And then just lean the tip back, okay? Grab the lure, right, toward the top. And then they're working with a bent rod. And a couple of things that's problematic with that. First of all, you're putting a lot of stress on your rod right at the very tip, and you can break it that way. And then also, you are, you know, working with the hooks or the lure kind of loaded, right? So if the fish pops off, there's going to be energy and it's going to pop off in your hands, your face, or whatever. So fish like this, you know, like 2 pounds or under, you could probably boat flip it. But what you want to do is, as you bring the fish toward the kayak, you work this, right? And you're trying to let out roughly a rod's length, okay? So I'm letting it out, and then I just lean the tip back a little bit, water ski the fish, and I grab the lure, okay? Now when you grab the lure, you don't want to grab it toward the bottom, okay? You don't want to grab it toward the bottom because if the fish is thrashing, the hooks can get you. So I grab it like toward the top so that even if the fish, a bigger fish is thrashing around, I'm not going to catch my hand. And if you want to be really safe with a big fish, of course, you want to use your fish grippers or whatever. I don't like the plastic kind. I had one hooked into a big lingcod and he did like a couple of death rolls and it snapped like a toothpick. So I like the metal ones, and maybe I'll do a video on which model and make I like. Okay, that brings us to the conclusion of this video, which is probably way too long already. I hope everyone is enjoying a great holiday season, and I sincerely wish you all the best for 2020. I've got some really cool stuff coming up. Mid-January, I am doing a paddling slash camping trip to the Black Canyon of the Colorado River. And if you live anywhere near like SoCal, Arizona, Nevada, that is a must-do trip. It is really that awesome. And then maybe in late March or April, I'm gonna get together with the Justice League superheroes, the same people that I did that crazy bike ride from Death Valley to Whitney Portal with, and then we're going to paddle from Ventura to Anacapa Island and spend a couple of nights out there. So that should be fun. In any case, thank you for dropping by. I appreciate you. Get out there, have fun, and be safe, and we will see you soon on our next adventure. Bye for now.